The world beneath our feet. Beneath our feet lies a world most people never think about. We walk across modern streets, fields, hills, and deserts without realizing that under layers of soil, stone, and centuries of silence, there are spaces where life once unfolded. The earth remembers differently than the air. Wind erases footsteps, rain washes away roads, forests grow over forgotten homes. But underground, time moves more slowly. There, carved walls remain, passageways endure, niches cut by human hands survive long after the voices that filled them have faded. Sometimes these places are found by accident. A worker breaks through a basement wall and discovers a hidden tunnel. A farmer digging a well strikes a stone staircase descending into darkness. Archaeologists surveying quiet hills notice narrow shafts that sink into the ground like the breathing holes of a buried city. These are not simple caves. They are traces of civilizations that learned to live underground, not for a night, not as a temporary refuge, but for years, even generations. They carved rooms from stone, connected tunnels into networks, created kitchens, storage chambers, sleeping areas, places of gathering, and even spaces for animals. Why would people choose such a life? To understand, we must imagine a world without the safety we take for granted, a world where danger could emerge from the forest, from the horizon, from rival groups, or from the forces of nature itself. A world where night was not just dark, but alive with sounds, predators, and uncertainty. Below ground, life was different. It was quieter. Temperatures changed slowly. Thick stone walls shielded against wind, cold, and heat. Narrow entrances could be sealed. Invaders could not easily reach those inside. The earth itself became a roof, a fortress, and a barrier between the living and the chaos above. But life underground demanded effort. Stone had to be cut, air had to circulate, water had to be stored, light had to be created by human hands. This was not an accidental adaptation, it was a deliberate, complex way of living. We often imagine ancient people as those who sought open skies and wide landscapes. Yet the story of underground cities reveals another side of human ingenuity, the ability to adapt to darkness, to carve comfort from rock, and to transform the depths of the earth into a home. Today, these places can feel strange, even unsettling. Narrow tunnels, low ceilings, air so still you can hear your own breathing. But once, for someone, this was safety. This was warmth. This was daily life. If we listen closely, we can almost imagine the quiet footsteps, the murmur of voices, and the soft glow of firelight touching stone walls far below the surface. The world beneath our feet has not disappeared. It has simply grown quiet. Why people chose to live underground. To understand why entire communities chose to live beneath the Earth's surface, we must first step into the ancient world, a world where safety was never guaranteed and the environment itself could be as threatening as any enemy. For early societies, survival was a daily negotiation with nature. Summer heat could be unbearable. Winter winds could freeze crops, animals, and people alike. Storms swept across open landscapes with little warning. In dry regions, the sun scorched the land, while in colder climates, icy winds cut through even the thickest clothing made from animal hides. Above ground, people were exposed. Below ground, the earth offered protection. Just a few meters beneath the surface, temperatures remained stable. In summer, underground chambers stayed cool. In winter, they held warmth. The soil and stone acted as natural insulation, softening the extremes of the seasons. For people without modern technology, this natural climate control was invaluable. But climate was only part of the story. There were also animals, large predators that hunted by night. Wolves, big cats, bears, and other creatures roamed the land long before cities and fences kept them at a distance. An entrance to an underground space could be made narrow, guarded, or even sealed. A family sleeping in a shallow cave or carved chamber was far less vulnerable than one resting in an open shelter. Then there were other humans. As populations grew, groups began to compete for land, water, and resources. Raids were a constant threat. Villages on open plains could be seen from far away. Smoke from fires could reveal a settlement's location, but entrances to underground spaces could be hidden, disguised, or built into natural rock formations. To an approaching enemy, the land might look empty. Meanwhile, entire communities could be living just below their feet. Underground settlements also allowed for control. Narrow tunnels limited how many attackers could enter at once. Defensive doors made of heavy stone could block passageways. High hidden openings could serve as lookouts or escape routes. The earth became a fortress shaped by human hands. There was also the matter of resources. Underground spaces could store food in cool, dry conditions, helping it last longer. Water could be drawn from wells or underground sources and protected from contamination. Grain, dried meat, and supplies could be kept safe from animals and theft. Living underground was not only about hiding, it was about creating a stable, defensible environment in an unpredictable world. Of course, it was not easy. Carving stone took time and effort. Tunnels had to be planned. Air had to flow. But the benefits were powerful enough that in some regions, people committed themselves to life below the surface, not just for emergencies, but as a way of life. What began as refuge slowly became residence, and over time those hidden spaces grew into something far more complex than simple shelters. They became cities in the dark.
The first cave homes. Long before humans began carving entire cities into stone, they learned a simpler lesson. Caves could be homes. At first, caves were places of temporary refuge. A sudden storm, a long night, a moment of danger. The natural hollow in the rock provided shelter when the open world felt too vast and uncertain. But over time, something changed. People began to return to the same caves again and again. Familiarity turned shelter into dwelling. Inside a cave, the air was still. The wind did not reach as fiercely. Rain could be heard, but not felt. The entrance framed the outside world like a distant painting, while the interior offered a space that felt enclosed, defined, almost protected. Early humans began to shape these spaces. They cleared debris from the floor. They placed stones to form boundaries. They arranged sleeping areas away from damp surfaces. Fire pits were positioned carefully so smoke could drift outward. The cave was no longer simply found, it was organized. Marks appeared on walls, charcoal drawings, handprints, simple shapes. These were not only expressions of creativity, they were signs of presence. A cave was no longer a random shelter. It was a place where people had lived, remembered, and left traces behind. Over time, the use of caves grew more sophisticated. Families returned season after season. Tools were stored, food was dried or hung in cool corners. Animal hides softened hard stone surfaces. The cave began to carry a sense of continuity, a place tied to memory and belonging. Light shaped life inside. Firelight flickered against stone walls, turning shadows into moving shapes. The glow created warmth and a sense of safety, even though darkness still filled the deeper parts of the cave. People learned to live with the rhythm of light and shadow, of brightness near the entrance and darkness deeper within. Sound changed as well. Voices echoed differently inside stone chambers. Footsteps softened. The outside world felt distant, filtered. Inside, people gathered, spoke quietly, worked, and rested in ways that differed from life in open spaces. Caves also taught early lessons about space. The deeper areas were cooler and darker, good for storing food. Areas near the entrance were brighter and better for daily activity. Different zones formed naturally, shaping how people moved and lived within the shelter. This was the beginning of a new relationship with the earth. Instead of merely walking across the land, humans began to inhabit it from within. Stone was no longer only something stepped upon. It became a wall, a ceiling, a boundary that defined interior life. Caves were the first step towards something larger. From natural hollows, humans one day would carve entire underground networks. But before there were cities beneath the surface, there were simple cave homes, quiet spaces where the idea of living within the earth first took root. When shelter became a permanent home. There comes a quiet turning point in human history, when a place stops being a refuge and becomes a home. At first, caves were used seasonally. People came and went, following animals, weather, and the cycles of the land. But gradually, some groups began to stay longer. The cave was no longer just a stop along the journey. It became the center of daily life. This change did not happen suddenly. It unfolded over years, even generations. Small adjustments accumulated. A wall was smoothed here, a floor leveled there. Stones were arranged to create defined spaces. Fires burned in the same places again and again, darkening the rock above with layers of soot. The cave interior began to feel familiar. Certain areas were used for sleeping, others for preparing food. Tools were stored in predictable spots. The space developed a rhythm shaped by repetition and memory. People knew where to step in the dark. They knew where warmth gathered and where the air felt cooler. Life settled into stone. As groups stayed longer, they invested more effort into shaping their surroundings. Rough edges were chipped away, narrow side chambers were widened, passages were cleared of debris. What had once been a natural hollow slowly began to carry the marks of deliberate design. The earth was no longer only providing shelter, it was being shaped to fit human life. This shift also changed how people thought about place. A temporary shelter leaves little behind, but a long-term home gathers history. Children grew up in the same chambers where their parents had slept. Fires were lit in the same hearths. Stories were told in the same echoing spaces. Stone held memory. It preserved the marks of hands, the blackened traces of countless fires, the worn surfaces where feet had passed over and over. Living underground created a sense of continuity that moved beyond a single season or generation. There were practical reasons, too. Remaining in one place allowed people to store more food, build stronger relationships within the group, and learn the details of their environment deeply. Water sources were known, safe routes were remembered. The cave became not just a shelter from danger, but a stable base in an uncertain world. Over time, some groups went further. They did not simply use the spaces they found, they expanded them. Rock was carved to make new chambers, narrow cracks were widened into usable rooms. The boundary between natural cave and human-made structure began to blur. This was the moment when living underground ceased to be an accident of geography. It became a choice. And from that choice would grow the first true underground communities, places where entire lives unfolded beneath the surface, shaped by darkness, stone, and the steady glow of firelight. Stone, silence, and natural protection. To live underground was to enter a different kind of world, one shaped not by open horizons and shifting weather, but by stone, stillness, and quiet protection. Beneath the surface, the air felt heavier but steadier. The sharp bite of winter winds never reached deep chambers. The fierce glare of summer sun faded into a gentle coolness. While the surface world swung between extremes, underground life moved at a calmer pace. Stone softened time. Temperatures changed slowly. A chamber that was warm at dusk would still hold that warmth long into the night. In the coldest seasons, the earth retained heat gathered from past days. In the hottest months, it preserved the coolness of deeper layers. Without knowing the science, ancient people understood the effect. Underground spaces felt stable. This stability meant survival. Food lasted longer in cool stone rooms. Stored grains, dried meats, and preserved supplies were protected from sudden heat. Water kept in underground chambers evaporated more slowly. Even fire behaved differently. Smoke lingered, but warmth remained, making careful placement of hearths essential. Then there was the silence. Above ground, sound carried far. Voices echoed across valleys. Footsteps could be heard from a distance. But underground, noise was softened by layers of earth and stone. The outside world felt distant, almost muted. This quiet was more than comfort, it was protection. Enemies approaching from afar might never know that people lived below. Smoke from fires could be directed through hidden vents.
Light from within did not easily escape into the night. Entrances could be narrow, hidden behind rock formations, or built into slopes that blended with the landscape. The earth concealed what it sheltered. Stone also offered strength. Walls did not burn, roofs did not collapse under heavy winds. Rain and snow could fall above while life continued below, largely unaffected. In times of danger, the underground became a place where families could gather and wait in relative safety. Yet this protection came with challenges. Air did not move freely. Without openings to the surface, smoke could accumulate and breathing could become difficult. Light did not exist without fire. Water had to be brought or carefully sourced. Every advantage underground required thought and effort. But for many communities, the balance was worth it. Stone gave what the open world could not: stability, concealment, and a sense of security that could not be easily found on exposed land. Underground, people could sleep with less fear of sudden attack or harsh weather. Life still demanded work, but it unfolded within walls that did not shift or disappear. Over time, this relationship with stone shaped culture itself. The underground was no longer just a shelter, it became a place of belonging. The sound of footsteps on packed earth floors, the glow of firelight against rough walls, the familiar curves of carved chambers all formed a quiet, steady backdrop to daily life. In the embrace of stone and silence, early underground communities found a kind of safety that the surface rarely offered.
The first underground villages. At some point, underground life grew beyond individual shelters and family dwellings. Separate chambers, once used by small groups, began to connect. Passages were widened, new rooms were carved. What had been a collection of caves slowly transformed into something larger: the first underground villages. This transformation did not follow a grand design. It unfolded gradually, shaped by need, experience, and time. A family might expand a chamber to store more food. Another might clear a nearby hollow for sleeping space. Over generations, these spaces began to link together. Tunnels formed between rooms. Narrow corridors became pathways walked daily. A shared underground network emerged, not from a single plan, but from many small decisions. Living together underground required coordination. Passageways could not be too narrow or movement would be difficult. Chambers had to be arranged so smoke from fires did not choke those sleeping nearby. Water storage areas needed to be protected. Each new addition had to fit into the growing maze without weakening the stone above. The result was a settlement shaped by careful adaptation. These early underground villages developed a sense of layout. Some areas were closer to the entrance and received faint natural light. These might be used for daily activity. Deeper chambers remained darker and cooler, better for storage or quiet rest. Over time, people learned the character of each space. Movement followed patterns. Paths between rooms became worn smooth by countless footsteps. Corners turned familiar. Children grew up knowing the route from sleeping chambers to gathering areas without needing guidance. The underground, once confusing, became a known landscape. Sound played a role here too. Voices echoed differently in tunnels than in open air. People learned to speak softly, to listen for footsteps, to recognize the presence of others through faint sounds carried along stone walls. Communication adapted to the new environment. These villages were not lifeless caves. They were active communities. People cooked, repaired tools, cared for children, and shared stories in the dim glow of firelight. The underground did not replace human connection, it reshaped it, drawing life inward and concentrating it within stone boundaries. Security remained a constant concern. Entrances were monitored, narrow corridors could be blocked if needed. Certain passages might be known only to residents, serving as escape routes or hidden storage areas. The village was both home and fortress, its complexity a form of defense. As these settlements grew, they laid the foundation for something even more remarkable: vast underground cities with multiple levels, ventilation systems, and space for entire populations. But those wonders began here, in the first underground villages, where simple caves evolved into shared worlds beneath the earth, shaped slowly by human hands and the quiet logic of survival.
Living without the sky. To live underground was to live without the sky. For people whose ancestors had always looked to the horizon, watched the weather, followed the sun and stars, this was a profound change. Beneath the earth, the cycle of day and night could no longer be seen directly. The movement of clouds, the shifting colors of sunrise and sunset, the phases of the moon, all were hidden behind layers of stone. Time felt different underground. Without sunlight streaming across the land, days were measured by routine rather than by shadows. The lighting of fires, the preparation of meals, the quiet hours of rest, these became the markers of time. Life moved according to human rhythms instead of celestial ones. Yet the sky was not forgotten. People still emerged to hunt, gather, and observe the world above. They carried memories of open space back with them. Stories of weather, seasons, and distant landscapes passed through underground chambers, keeping the surface alive in thought even when it was out of sight. Inside, adaptation continued. Eyes adjusted to dimmer light. Movements grew more careful in narrow passages. People learned to navigate by touch as much as sight, tracing familiar walls, counting steps, recognizing the shape of rooms by memory. Darkness was no longer only an absence, it became a space to move within confidently. Emotions shifted too. The underground could feel close, protective, but also enclosed. To balance this, entrances were kept open when possible. Air shafts allowed faint drafts and distant sounds from the surface. These small connections reminded those below that the wider world still existed. Communities developed ways to maintain balance. Time above ground was woven into life below. Tasks were organized around when people returned from the surface. News from outside shaped decisions inside. The underground was not a complete separation from the world, but a different layer of it. Children growing up in these spaces experienced the world differently from their ancestors. Their first memories might be of stone ceilings and fire-lit walls rather than endless skies. For them, the underground was not strange, it was simply home. Still, the pull of the sky remained. Even those who felt safe in stone chambers would pause at entrances, looking outward, breathing in open air, feeling sunlight on their faces. The contrast between above and below became part of daily life, two worlds connected by narrow passages and human movement. Living without the sky did not mean abandoning it. It meant learning to carry its memory into darkness, shaping a life that could exist both beneath the earth and in the light above.
Light in the darkness. If the underground was defined by stone and shadow, then light was its most precious gift. Below the surface, there was no sunrise to gently wake the world, no fading twilight to soften the day into night. Darkness was constant, thick and complete. Without light, life could not continue, and so the people who lived beneath the earth became masters of fire. A single flame could transform a chamber. Where there had been only blackness, shapes emerged. Stone walls caught a warm glow. Faces appeared, flickering with shifting shadows. The small circle of firelight became the center of activity, a boundary between the known and the unseen. Fire was more than warmth. It was time, safety, and community. Hearths were placed carefully, too deep in the chamber, and smoke would gather, choking the air. Too close to entrances, and precious heat would escape. Over generations, people learned to position fires where air could circulate and light could spread, turning natural hollows into habitable spaces. The glow of flame shaped daily rhythm. Work happened where light reached. Tools were repaired, food prepared, and stories told in the warm circle around the hearth. Beyond it lay darkness, a reminder of the limits of human control in the underground world. Light also shaped emotion. Flickering flames made shadows move across walls, giving stone a sense of life. Patterns in rock seemed to shift. Faces changed with each movement of fire. This dance of light and shadow may have influenced imagination, storytelling, and early forms of symbolic thought. Children grew up watching light move across ceilings. They learned to associate its warmth with safety and its absence with caution. Carrying a small torch through a tunnel was an act of bravery, pushing back the darkness step by careful step. Maintaining fire became a constant responsibility. Fuel had to be gathered above ground and carried below. Flames had to be protected from drafts and moisture. Embers were saved and rekindled, ensuring that light would never fully disappear from the underground home. Over time, people may have developed other ways to extend light, using reflective surfaces, arranging stones to direct the glow, choosing lighter rock walls that made chambers feel brighter. Every small adjustment made the underground more livable. In a world without the sky, light became a shared treasure. It brought people together, defined space, and turned stone chambers into places of warmth and life. In the steady glow of firelight, the underground civilization found not just survival, but a sense of belonging.
Air, water, and the hidden systems of survival. Light made life visible underground, but air and water made it possible. Beneath the surface, these two invisible necessities could not be taken for granted. Unlike the open world, where wind moved freely and streams flowed across the land, underground spaces required careful attention to ensure that breath and hydration remained constant. Air was the first challenge. In deep chambers, smoke from fires could linger, thickening the atmosphere and making breathing difficult. Over time, underground communities learned to recognize which passages carried fresh drafts and which felt heavy and still. These natural air currents became guides for where to build, where to sleep, and where to light fires. Ventilation became an art of observation. Openings to the surface were placed in ways that allowed air to move slowly through the settlement. A narrow shaft here, a higher vent there, each played a role in keeping the underground livable. Even without understanding airflow in a scientific sense, people sensed its patterns and adjusted accordingly. Water was equally precious. Some caves held natural springs or slow drips of mineral-rich water from the ceiling. These sources were protected and used carefully. Elsewhere, water had to be carried down from the surface and stored in cool stone chambers where evaporation was slow. Storage spaces for water were chosen with care. Too close to fires, and the water would warm and spoil. Too deep and difficult to reach, and daily life would become harder. Over time, communities organized their underground spaces around these vital needs. Air and water shaped the layout of life. Sleeping areas were placed where air felt freshest. Food storage remained in cooler, stable chambers. Fires burned in places where smoke could escape upward through cracks or shafts. The underground settlement slowly became a system, each part connected to the flow of unseen elements. These hidden systems required constant awareness. A blocked air passage could make a chamber unusable. A dried-up water source could force a change in living patterns. Underground life demanded careful listening, not just to sounds, but to the feel of air, the scent of smoke, the taste of water. This attentiveness deepened the bond between people and their environment. The underground was not a passive shelter. It was a living space that responded to changes above and below. Survival depended on understanding its subtle signals. Through generations of trial and memory, early underground communities learned to balance light, air, and water. These elements formed the foundation of their hidden world, allowing life to continue beneath the surface in a delicate, carefully maintained equilibrium.
Storage, food, and planning for the future. To live underground was not only to survive the present, but to prepare for the future. On the surface, food could sometimes be found day by day, gathered from plants, hunted from animals, or collected with the rhythm of the seasons. But underground communities learned quickly that stability below depended on careful planning above. Food had to be stored. The cool, steady temperatures beneath the earth made underground chambers ideal for preservation. In shaded recesses, away from fire and moisture, dried meat could last longer. Grains and seeds stayed protected from heat and direct sunlight. Roots and tubers remained fresh in the steady coolness of stone. Certain chambers became dedicated storage spaces. These areas were kept clean, organized, and often slightly separate from living quarters. The community understood that their safety during harsh seasons depended on these hidden reserves. The underground became a natural storehouse, preserving not just food, but security. Preparation changed daily life. Time was spent not only hunting or gathering, but also drying, grinding, and storing. Tools were made specifically for these tasks. Containers were shaped from stone, clay, or woven materials. Food was no longer simply consumed, it was managed. This shift encouraged long-term thinking. Communities began to consider how much they would need weeks or months ahead. Surplus became important. Sharing food within the group strengthened bonds and ensured that no one faced scarcity alone. Planning for the future became part of the culture. The underground space itself influenced these habits. Because chambers were enclosed and finite, everything had its place. Supplies were arranged in predictable areas. Pathways between storage and cooking spaces were kept clear. Order made life smoother in a world where light and movement were limited. Children grew up watching these preparations. They learned not just how to find food, but how to protect it, preserve it, and think ahead. Knowledge passed from one generation to the next, shaping a community that valued patience and foresight. In times of harsh weather or danger above, these stored resources became life-saving. While storms raged or conflict threatened the surface, life below could continue with less disruption. The underground offered more than shelter, it offered continuity. Through careful storage and planning, early underground societies transformed the uncertainty of nature into a more predictable rhythm. They built not just homes beneath the earth, but a future, protected in cool stone chambers where time moved more gently.
Tools, craft, and life shaped by stone. Beneath the surface, surrounded by rock on all sides, people learned to shape their lives with the very material that enclosed them. Stone was not just a barrier, it was a resource. In underground communities, tools had to be durable, practical, and suited to a world where space was limited and surfaces were hard. Sharp stone blades cut meat and plant fibers. Heavy tools chipped away at walls to widen passages or carve new chambers. Smooth stones served as grinding surfaces for seeds and grains. Every tool carried purpose. Unlike on the open land, where materials like wood might be more readily available, underground life demanded creativity with what was at hand. People learned which types of rock fractured cleanly and which remained strong under pressure. Knowledge of stone became as important as knowledge of animals or plants. Craftsmanship developed slowly, guided by need. Handles were shaped for better grip in dim light. Edges were refined for precision. Tools were stored carefully in predictable places so they could be found easily when needed. Losing an essential tool in darkness could disrupt the rhythm of daily life. Stone also influenced the way spaces were shaped. Walls were carved smoother over time, not only for comfort, but for function. Rough protrusions were removed to prevent injury. Flat surfaces were created for working, sitting, or storing items. The underground became more than natural rock. It became a shaped environment. These acts of shaping were a form of quiet transformation. With each strike of a tool against stone, people changed their surroundings to better fit human needs. Over generations, the difference between natural cave and human-crafted space blurred. Rooms gained structure. Pathways became intentional. The underground slowly reflected human presence. Craft extended beyond tools.
Containers for storage, coverings for warmth, and simple decorations all emerged within this enclosed world. Even in darkness, people sought comfort and familiarity. Objects carried personal meaning, connecting individuals to their community and daily routines. Skill passed from one generation to the next. Children learned by watching elders chip, grind, and shape. They practiced with small tasks before handling more complex work. Knowledge became part of identity, a shared understanding of how to live well within stone walls. In this way, the underground did not limit human creativity, it redirected it. Surrounded by rock, people learned to master it, shaping tools, spaces, and daily life through steady, careful work. Their world was carved slowly, not by grand design, but by countless small acts that turned raw stone into a place of living.
Sound, echo, and communication below. In the underground world, sight was limited, but sound traveled in unexpected ways. Stone did not absorb noise the way open air did. It carried it, bent it, and returned it. A single footstep in a narrow passage could echo along curved walls. A quiet voice could seem to come from several directions at once. Over time, people learned that underground life required a different kind of listening. Sound became a guide. Residents could recognize familiar footsteps approaching through tunnels. They could tell whether someone was nearby by the faint shift in echoes. Children learned early how their voices behaved in different chambers. Some amplified sound, others softened it. Communication adapted to this environment. Speaking too loudly could be disorienting, as echoes overlapped and blurred meaning. Soft, steady voices carried better. Rhythmic tapping, clapping, or knocking may have been used to send simple signals through stone corridors, alerting others without needing to shout. Silence also had meaning. A chamber that usually hummed with quiet activity felt different when empty. The absence of sound signaled change, perhaps that people were out gathering, or that something was wrong. Listening became a form of awareness as important as seeing. Fire added its own sounds. The crackle of burning wood, the soft hiss of embers, and the faint shifting of air around the flame filled the underground with a gentle background rhythm. These sounds were comforting, marking the presence of life and warmth in the darkness. Storytelling changed as well. In enclosed chambers, voices carried closely, creating intimate gatherings. Words did not drift away on the wind. They lingered, surrounded by stone. The underground may have deepened the sense of shared experience, as listeners felt physically closer to the storyteller. Over time, people learned the acoustic map of their home. Certain passages echoed sharply, others absorbed sound.
Some chambers amplified whispers, while others felt almost silent. These patterns became part of memory, shaping how people moved and spoke. In a place where light was scarce, sound became another way to understand the environment. The underground civilization listened to its own world, to footsteps, voices, fire, and the quiet hum of life beneath the earth.
Ritual, belief, and the meaning of the underground. Living beneath the earth did more than change daily habits. It shaped how people understood the world itself. For communities that spent much of their lives surrounded by stone, darkness, and echoing chambers, the underground was not simply a physical space. It became a place of meaning. The earth above was vast and unpredictable, filled with weather, animals, and distant horizons. The underground was close, enclosed, and constant. Such a world invited reflection. Certain chambers may have felt different from others, quieter, deeper, more isolated. These spaces could take on special roles. Gatherings held there might feel more solemn. Stories told in these chambers might carry deeper weight. The environment itself shaped emotion. Firelight played a role in this transformation. Flickering flames turned rough walls into shifting patterns of light and shadow. Natural markings in stone could appear as figures or shapes. The movement of light gave the impression that the walls themselves were alive. In such an atmosphere, imagination grew easily. Rituals may have emerged in response to this unique setting. Moments of celebration, remembrance, or transition could be marked in particular chambers. The underground offered privacy and focus, free from the distractions of the surface world. Sound carried softly. Light remained controlled. The space encouraged attention and shared feeling. Burial practices may also have been influenced. Some underground communities might have chosen to keep their dead within the earth that had sheltered them in life. Stone chambers could become places of memory, linking past and present in a single physical space. The underground thus became not only a home, but a place of continuity. Beliefs about the world above and below may have intertwined. The surface, with its sky and changing seasons, represented one realm of existence. The underground, steady and hidden, represented another. Moving between these spaces, climbing from a chamber into daylight, could feel like crossing a boundary between different worlds. Over time, these experiences shaped stories and symbols. Children growing up underground would not only absorb practical knowledge, but also the meanings attached to certain spaces and actions. A particular chamber might be associated with important gatherings. A certain passage might be linked to an old story. The underground civilization did not just live beneath the earth. It wove the underground into its understanding of life, memory, and belonging. Stone, darkness, and firelight became part of how people made sense of their place in the world, not as something hidden, but as something deeply connected to who they were.
Trade, contact, and the world above. Though life centered beneath the earth, underground communities were never completely cut off from the surface. They still needed what the underground could not provide: fresh plant foods, animals to hunt, materials like wood, fibers, and certain types of stone not found nearby. Regular journeys above ground remained essential, and these journeys kept the connection between worlds alive. Paths formed between settlements and the surface landscape. People learned the safest routes, the places where water could be found, and the regions where animals migrated. Even if most daily life unfolded below, knowledge of the outside world remained vital and was passed down through stories and experience. Contact with other groups was also likely. Underground communities did not exist in isolation forever. Meetings could occur during seasonal gatherings, shared hunting grounds, or exchanges of goods. Items such as tools, ornaments, or rare materials might move between groups, carried along human networks that stretched across landscapes. These exchanges were more than practical. They were moments of connection where news traveled, alliances formed, and cultural ideas spread. A design carved in stone in one region might appear later in another. Techniques for shaping tools or storing food could move from group to group. The underground settlement became one part of a larger world. Residents who returned from journeys brought back not only resources, but also stories of distant places, open plains, forests, rivers, or other underground homes. These tales helped shape how the community imagined the world beyond their stone chambers. Trade and contact also required balance. Too much time above ground meant greater exposure to danger. Too little contact risked isolation and lack of resources. Communities learned to maintain a rhythm between the safety of the underground and the opportunities of the surface. This balance strengthened adaptability. People understood both environments: the stable and closed world below, and the open, shifting world above. They could move between them when needed, carrying knowledge, goods, and ideas. In this way, the underground civilization was never truly hidden from the world. It was connected through quiet networks of travel and exchange, linking stone chambers to distant landscapes and other human lives beyond the horizon.
Defense, danger, and hidden safety. The underground offered protection, but it did not remove danger from human life. Instead, it changed the way communities thought about safety. On the surface, threats could be seen from a distance: storms gathering, animals moving across open land, other groups approaching. Below ground, vision was limited. Safety depended on preparation and awareness rather than wide horizons. Entrances became critical points. They were the narrow bridges between two worlds: the exposed surface and the protected underground. These openings were often small, easy to conceal, and carefully watched. A well-hidden entrance could make an entire community invisible to those passing nearby. Design itself became a form of defense. Tunnels might be narrow and winding, slowing the movement of anyone unfamiliar with them. Certain passages could be blocked quickly with stones or barriers. Residents knew which routes were safest, which chambers offered shelter,
and where supplies were stored in case of emergency. Sound also played a role in safety. Echoes carried warnings. A distant footstep or unusual noise might alert people to approaching danger long before it reached the main living areas. The underground's acoustics, once learned, became part of a protective system. But danger was not only human or animal. Fire, essential for warmth and light, also posed risk. In enclosed spaces, smoke could accumulate. Flames could spread to stored materials. Careful habits developed, hearths placed in specific areas, fires tended with constant attention, fuel stored safely. The underground demanded discipline. Everyone needed to understand how their actions affected the whole. A blocked passage, a neglected fire, or a forgotten water source could endanger many. Safety depended on shared responsibility. In times of greater threat, whether from harsh weather, predators, or conflict, the underground offered refuge. Families could gather in deeper chambers, protected by layers of stone. Supplies stored over time could sustain them until danger passed. This hidden safety shaped how people felt about their home. The underground was not just a place to live, it was a place to endure. It offered a sense of security that the open world rarely provided. Within its walls, people could sleep with less fear, knowing that stone and careful design stood between them and many dangers. Yet safety was never absolute. Life underground required constant attention, cooperation, and respect for the environment. Protection came not only from stone, but from the shared knowledge and habits of the community itself. Generations beneath the earth. As years passed, underground life was no longer a temporary solution. It became a way of existence carried from one generation to the next. Children were born in stone chambers, their first cries echoing softly along curved walls. Their earliest memories were of firelight flickering on ceilings and the steady presence of familiar faces gathered close. For them, the underground was not unusual, it was simply the world. Knowledge flowed quietly through daily life. Elders showed the young how to move safely through narrow passages, where to step, how to hold a torch without dropping embers. They taught which chambers stayed warm, which held stored food, which carried fresh air. Understanding the underground was part of growing up. Stories shaped identity. Tales of the outside world, wide skies, changing seasons, distant landscapes were told by those who remembered more time above ground. These stories kept the outside world alive in imagination, even as daily life centered below. The underground itself became a living record. Marks on walls, worn floors, and long-used hearths told silent stories of those who had come before. Generations added to this history, shaping the space with each passing year. Stone held the memory of countless lives. Roles within the community deepened over time. Some individuals became known for their skill with tools, others for their knowledge of routes to the surface or the care of stored food. Children observed these roles and slowly grew into them, ensuring that essential knowledge did not disappear.
Living close together strengthened bonds. Shared spaces meant shared experiences. Meals, work, rest, and storytelling happened within earshot of one another. Community life was immediate and constant. People depended on each other not only for survival, but for comfort and belonging. Underground life also taught patience. Stone changed slowly, and so did life within it. Plans were made with the future in mind. Passages were widened not only for the present, but for those who would come later. The sense of continuity extended beyond a single lifetime. Over generations, underground communities developed traditions unique to their way of life. Certain chambers might be associated with gatherings or important events. Particular routes became part of shared memory. Life beneath the earth shaped not just daily habits, but the very sense of who people were. They were not simply humans living underground. They were a people of stone and firelight, connected by shared space, shared memory, and the steady rhythm of life beneath the surface.
Changes in the world above. While life unfolded in steady rhythms underground, the world above never stopped changing. Seasons shifted, landscapes evolved, and the balance of animals and plants moved with time. Underground communities, though protected by stone, remained connected to these changes through their journeys to the surface. What happened above always echoed below. Climate could alter slowly or suddenly. A series of colder winters might shorten growing seasons. Warmer periods could change the paths of migrating animals. Drought might dry familiar water sources. Those who ventured above noticed these differences first, bringing back stories of altered landscapes. Such reports shaped decisions underground. If food became harder to find in certain areas, routes were adjusted. Storage practices changed to prepare for leaner times. The underground settlement provided stability, but it could not isolate people from the needs of the natural world. Plants and animals shifted their patterns. Hunting grounds might move farther away. Familiar gathering spots could disappear. Communities had to travel more, adapt techniques, and share knowledge quickly to keep pace with these changes. Even the entrances to underground homes could be affected. Heavy rains might flood lower openings. Erosion could expose hidden passages or block others. Maintenance became part of survival as residents adjusted their connections to the surface. These changes reminded people that their underground world existed within a larger system. Though stone walls felt permanent, life depended on cycles happening far above. The underground was a refuge, but not a complete separation from nature's forces. Stories passed down through generations helped people interpret these shifts. Elders recalled times when animals were more plentiful or winters harsher. Memory became a guide, offering perspective on present challenges. Communities that listened to this collective knowledge could adapt more effectively. Change above often strengthened cooperation below. As conditions grew uncertain, sharing resources and information became more important. The underground settlement functioned not just as a shelter, but as a center for planning and mutual support. Through these experiences, people learned a quiet truth. No place is entirely separate from the world around it. The underground offered protection and stability, but it existed within the larger rhythms of earth, weather, and life. Adapting to change became part of the identity of those who lived beneath the surface.
Expansion, complexity, and larger communities. As generations passed and underground life proved stable, some communities began to grow beyond their original scale. New chambers were carved, existing tunnels were widened. What had once been a modest network of rooms slowly expanded into more complex systems beneath the earth. The underground was no longer just a place of shelter. It was becoming a built environment shaped by long-term vision. Growth happened step by step. A family might need more space. A storage area might be expanded. A new passage might be carved to reach better airflow or a hidden water source. Each addition seemed small at first, but over time these changes created multi-layered settlements. Movement within these spaces became more organized. Paths developed into main routes connecting central chambers. Smaller tunnels branched off toward sleeping areas or storage rooms. Some passages might be used daily, others only in special circumstances. The underground gained a sense of structure. With greater size came greater complexity. Ventilation had to be managed carefully to keep air flowing. Waste needed to be moved away from living areas. Water storage required protection and planning. The community's survival depended on understanding how one space affected another. Cooperation grew in importance. Larger groups meant more hands to carve, build, and maintain, but also more need for coordination. Tasks were shared. Knowledge was passed clearly. The underground became a place where collective effort shaped the environment. Social life expanded too. More people meant more relationships, more shared experiences, and more opportunities for gathering. Larger chambers might be used for communal activities, storytelling, or decision-making. The underground was not only functional, it was social. Some settlements may have reached impressive sizes. Multiple levels could form as new chambers were dug below older ones. Hidden rooms might store supplies for emergencies. Secret passages could provide alternate routes in times of danger. The underground became a carefully designed system, shaped over generations. This growth reflected confidence. People were no longer merely surviving below ground, they were investing in it. They believed their future lay within these stone walls and were willing to shape them for the long term. In these expanding underground communities, we see the early signs of human planning on a larger scale, settlements designed not just for today, but for many tomorrows beneath the earth.
Art, symbols, and memory in stone. As underground life grew more stable and complex, people began to leave more than footprints behind. Stone walls that had once been only surfaces for support slowly became places of expression. Marks appeared, scratches, carvings,
patterns made with soot or natural pigments. At first, these may have been simple: lines to count, signs to mark ownership, symbols to guide movement. Over time, meaning deepened. Certain chambers might hold repeated patterns, shapes that carried shared significance. A symbol could mark a gathering place. A series of lines might represent seasons or events. The underground, once only a shelter, became a record of memory. Art in such spaces was not created for distant viewers. It was meant for those who lived within the stone. The flicker of firelight made carvings seem to move. Shadows shifted across painted forms, giving them a sense of life. The underground environment shaped how art was seen and experienced. Storytelling and art became intertwined. Images on walls could remind people of important hunts, journeys, or shared struggles. Symbols might represent animals, people, or ideas that held value for the group. In the absence of written language, these marks helped preserve knowledge. Children growing up underground would learn to read these signs. An elder might trace a symbol with a finger, explaining its meaning. Stories passed from voice to image and back again. The stone walls became a kind of collective memory, holding fragments of the past. Even the placement of art mattered. Deep chambers, quieter and more secluded, may have been chosen for images tied to ritual or belief. More visible areas might hold practical markings. The underground space itself gave structure to meaning. Art also strengthened identity. When people saw familiar symbols around them, they were reminded of who they were and where they belonged. The underground was not just stone and darkness. It was filled with traces of human presence and shared experience. Through these carvings and markings, underground communities left a lasting imprint on their environment. They transformed bare rock into a space layered with memory, meaning, and quiet creativity.
Why the underground civilization faded. No way of life lasts unchanged forever. Though underground communities adapted remarkably well to life beneath the surface, the balance they maintained was delicate. Over time, a combination of pressures from above and below began to shift the rhythm of their world. Change often begins quietly. A water source that once flowed steadily might weaken. Air passages could become blocked by natural shifts in rock. A particularly harsh season above ground might make food harder to find. Each difficulty alone could be managed, but together they strained the stability of underground life. Population growth may have played a role. As communities expanded, their needs increased. More food was required. More air had to circulate through deeper chambers. More space had to be carved and maintained. The underground, once a refuge of stability, became harder to sustain for larger groups. Connections to the surface remained essential. If climate patterns changed, hunting and gathering became less predictable. Travel routes could grow longer or more dangerous. The effort required to support life below ground increased, and some communities may have begun to question whether remaining underground was still the best choice.
Natural events could also reshape the underground itself. Earth movements might collapse passages. Flooding could damage chambers. A blocked entrance could isolate part of a settlement. Even small geological changes could disrupt carefully balanced systems of air and water. Gradually, some groups may have spent more time above ground again. Temporary shelters on the surface could turn into more permanent homes. The underground, once central to life, became a place visited less often. Knowledge of certain passages faded as fewer people used them. Cultural shifts followed practical ones. As generations grew up spending more time in open landscapes, traditions tied to underground living slowly weakened. Stories of stone chambers and hidden halls remained, but daily life moved elsewhere. The underground civilization did not vanish overnight. It receded. Some settlements were abandoned completely, left quiet beneath the earth. Others remained in limited use, perhaps as storage or refuge in times of danger. The memory of life below ground lingered in stories, symbols, and the shaped spaces left behind. In time, nature reclaimed these places. Dust settled, entrances collapsed or became hidden by vegetation. The once busy chambers fell silent, holding only echoes of lives once lived within their stone walls. Yet the underground civilization did not truly disappear. Its legacy lived on in the adaptability, planning, and sense of community that its people carried into new ways of living, above ground, under open skies, but shaped forever by the time they spent beneath the earth.
Echoes beneath the earth, discovering the past. After the last fires burned out in underground chambers, the spaces remained. Stone changes slowly. Tunnels carved by human hands, smoothed by generations of footsteps, can endure long after voices have faded. Over time, entrances may have collapsed, passages filled with sediment, and signs of habitation hidden beneath layers of dust and mineral deposits. Yet traces remained. Marks on walls, soot stains from ancient hearths, carved steps in narrow shafts, these quiet details waited in darkness. For those who would one day enter these forgotten spaces, the underground held a silent record of lives once lived there. The rediscovery of such places would come much later. Travelers might stumble upon an unusual opening in a hillside. Erosion could expose the edge of a carved tunnel. Curious explorers, stepping into cool darkness, would feel the air shift and the sound change beneath the earth. At first, these spaces might seem natural, but careful observation reveals difference. Straight walls where nature would leave curves, steps where there should be only uneven rock, soot-darkened ceilings in chambers far from sunlight. Each detail tells a story of human presence. To modern eyes, such underground settlements feel mysterious. Why live here? How did people survive in darkness? What daily life unfolded in these hidden halls? The answers lie in the careful balance of protection, adaptation, and community that shaped underground living long ago. Archaeologists and explorers, moving slowly with lights and tools, piece together this story. They examined the arrangement of chambers, the remains of tools, the patterns carved into walls. From scattered clues, they reconstruct how air moved, where water was stored, how people organized their lives beneath the earth. The underground civilization, once invisible to the world above, becomes visible again through these discoveries. Its story challenges assumptions about early human life. It reveals flexibility, ingenuity, and a willingness to reshape environments in ways that supported survival. Standing in such a chamber today, one can still feel the presence of the past. The air is cool, the silence deep. Stone walls hold faint marks left by human hands thousands of years ago. The underground, though quiet now, still echoes with memory. Through rediscovery, the hidden civilization beneath the earth speaks again, not with voices, but with space, stone, and the enduring traces of human life.
The story of an underground civilization is not only about stone chambers and hidden tunnels. It is a story about human nature itself. To choose life beneath the earth required more than necessity. It required imagination, the ability to see possibility where others might see only darkness. Early underground communities did not simply hide. They adapted, reshaped their environment, and built a functioning world in an unlikely place. This speaks to one of the most enduring human traits: flexibility. Humans are not bound to a single way of living. Across time and landscapes, people have found ways to survive in deserts, forests, mountains, and frozen lands. The underground was another environment that demanded creativity and patience. Living in enclosed spaces also highlights the importance of cooperation. Stone chambers offered safety, but only if people worked together. Air had to flow, water had to be stored for consumption, fires had to be tended carefully. One person's actions affected everyone. Underground life made this interdependence clear. It also deepened awareness of environment. Those who lived beneath the earth learned to notice subtle changes: the feel of air, the sound of echoes, the slow drip of water. Survival depended on listening closely and responding thoughtfully. The underground encouraged attentiveness rather than domination. Community identity grew stronger in such conditions. Living close together, sharing limited space, people developed bonds rooted in daily cooperation. Stories, rituals, and shared memories became essential, weaving individuals into a collective sense of belonging. The underground also reveals the human desire to shape space. Even in natural caves, people carved, smoothed, arranged, and decorated. They turned raw stone into homes, pathways, and places of meaning. This impulse to transform surroundings into lived environments is a defining feature of human life. Perhaps most importantly, the underground civilization shows that human history is not a straight line. Progress does not always mean moving outward or upward. Sometimes survival requires turning inward, finding stability in shelter rather than expansion. Different environments inspire different forms of innovation. In the quiet story of life beneath the earth, we see resilience, cooperation, imagination, and memory, qualities that continue to shape humanity today. The underground, though hidden, reflects the enduring spirit of adaptation that defines the human journey.
Legends, myths, and stories of the underworld. Long after the practical reasons for underground life faded, the memory of living beneath the earth may have transformed into story. Across many cultures, myths speak of hidden worlds below the surface, places where spirits dwell, where ancestors rest, or where mysterious beings live in darkness. These stories, though shaped by imagination, may carry faint echoes of a time when humans themselves made homes underground. Memory often survives through symbol. A tunnel once used for daily movement might become, in story, a passage between worlds. A deep chamber might be remembered as a sacred place. Over generations, practical spaces can take on symbolic meaning, turning lived experience into legend. The underground easily lends itself to mystery. It is dark, enclosed, and hidden from view. Sounds behave strangely, light flickers. Such an environment can feel separate from ordinary life, like a threshold between different realms. It is not surprising that people would weave powerful stories around such spaces. In oral traditions, the underworld often appears as a place of transition. Heroes journey below and return changed. Ancestors dwell beneath the earth. Knowledge or power may be found in hidden depths. These themes reflect a deep human sense that the underground is not merely physical space, but a realm of meaning. For communities with distant memories of underground living, such myths may preserve fragments of history. Stories of stone halls, hidden passages, or worlds beneath the surface could originate in lived experience, reshaped over centuries into narrative form. What was once daily reality becomes part of cultural imagination. Even where no direct memory remained, the idea of life below ground resonated. Caves and deep places have always drawn human curiosity. They inspire awe and caution. They invite exploration and storytelling. The underground becomes a canvas for imagining origins, mysteries, and hidden truths. In this way, the underground civilization may have left not only physical traces, but also narrative ones. Though the chambers grew silent and entrances disappeared, the idea of a world beneath the earth continued to live on in myth, legend, and the quiet fascination people feel when standing at the mouth of a dark cave. Through story, the hidden past remains part of the human imagination.
The underground in the modern imagination. Today, most people live under open skies, surrounded by cities, roads, and wide horizons. Yet the idea of life beneath the earth continues to capture the imagination. Modern stories often return to the underground as a place of mystery, refuge, or survival. In times of imagined disaster, people picture cities below ground, protected from storms, conflict, or environmental change. The ancient instinct to seek shelter in stone still echoes in these visions. Science and technology have brought humans underground in new ways. Subways move beneath cities. Mines extend deep into the earth. Laboratories and storage facilities are built below the surface for safety and stability. Even in the modern world, the underground remains a place where humans work, travel, and sometimes seek protection.
These spaces, though engineered differently, carry a familiar feeling. The air is cooler, light is artificial, sound behaves strangely. There is a sense of separation from the world above. People moving through underground tunnels today experience, in small ways, the same shift in perception that ancient communities once knew. The underground also represents the unknown. It is a place where secrets can be hidden, where history can be preserved, and where forgotten things may wait to be rediscovered. This symbolism appears again and again in modern literature, films, and art. Yet there is also a sense of continuity. When modern explorers enter ancient underground settlements, they bridge past and present. The same human hands that once carved chambers long ago shaped the spaces we walk through today. The underground connects generations across time. It reminds us that human history is layered. Beneath our cities and fields lie traces of earlier lives, shelters, tunnels, and chambers that once held warmth, stories, and community. The ground we stand on hides countless human experiences. In the modern imagination, the underground remains both a physical reality and a symbol. It represents protection and mystery, memory and possibility. It speaks to the enduring human ability to adapt, to build, and to find meaning in even the darkest places. The story of the underground civilization continues not only in archaeology, but in the way we still think about space, safety, and the hidden layers of our world.
Imagine for a moment the final evening in an underground chamber once filled with life. The air is cool, as it has always been. Stone walls hold the memory of countless nights before. A small fire burns low, its light soft and steady, casting long shadows across carved surfaces worn smooth by generations of hands. People gather one last time. They speak quietly, their voices familiar in the enclosed space. They know that tomorrow they will leave, not just for a journey above, but perhaps forever. The underground, once their center of life, is becoming a memory. The decision was not sudden. It grew slowly, shaped by changing conditions above and below. Food became easier to find on the surface. Air and water systems underground grew harder to maintain. Children spent more time under the open sky than in stone corridors. The balance had shifted. Still, leaving is never easy. Every chamber holds history. Marks on the wall recall past gatherings. A hearth in the corner shows layers of ash from fires long gone. These are not just places, they are chapters of a shared story. One by one, belongings are carried upward. Tools, stored food, woven items. What can be moved is taken. What cannot is left behind. The underground world grows quieter with each departure, footsteps fading into upper tunnels. At last, only the fire remains. Someone kneels beside it, watching the embers glow. The warmth that once filled the chamber now feels fragile, temporary. With a final gesture, the embers are allowed to fade. Smoke thins and disappears into the darkness. Silence settles. No more voices echo through passages. No more footsteps trace familiar routes. The underground returns to stillness, holding only the shape of human life that once animated it. Time passes. Dust gathers. Small shifts in stone alter the edges of passages. Entrances collapse or become hidden by soil and vegetation.
The underground civilization becomes invisible, folded back into the earth. Yet it is never truly gone. Its spaces remain, waiting. Its story lives in the adaptability, memory, and imagination of the people who once called it home, and in those who will one day rediscover these hidden worlds. The last fire beneath the earth goes out, but the human spirit that built its light continues above, under the open sky, shaped forever by time spent in the quiet chambers below.